everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Vidie. For those of you who are new here, this is very different from my usual reading wrap-ups slash monthly TBRs and stuff like that. We're going to actually start off this video kind of different because there's going to be no book vlog or haul this video. I have a lot of books at home. I will be buying maybe 2 or 3 more books for this month, but I'm not going to be going until next week because I want to go get new releases. Instead, I'm gonna kind of walk you all through just my reading wrap up, and then I'll show you all the books that I will be starting with for July. But if you all want a book haul, bookish video and stuff like that, you're going to have to wait until the next video that comes out. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the one after this one because I want to show you all what my actual July TBR will be like. We're just going to stick with the reading wrap up instead. Let's jump right into it. For June, I read all of these books right here. So in total, I read 7 books. So just quick statistics of what I read this month. I read 4 romance books, 1 fantasy romance, and 2 young adult fantasy romance books. And out of those 7 books, 5 of them were regular sized novels and 2 of them were novellas. In total, I read 2,435 pages this month. So we'll go ahead and jump straight into the book reviews. This month we started off strong with Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. So this story is about Brianna, who is our main character. It's kind of going through the struggles of life, meets Jacob, who is the main love interest, and it follows along on their story, on their journey. It is a fake dating trope. I think it is super cute. They write letters to each other, they leave post-it notes for each other. Like I said, it's fake dating, so they do have like whole fake dating scenes. You get to see a little bit of the involvement in the other characters from the first book and then the book after this one. It was super cute. For a more kind of in-depth review, you can always go look at my reading romance books for the week video. I talked a little bit more about this. As always, Abby Jimenez really captured my heart with this book. The characters are so much more complex than a typical romance book. I feel like she talks a lot about mental health and trauma healing and stuff like that in her books. There's amazing banter between the two. The chemistry is top tier. I really just enjoyed this book, and for that I want to say that this is my favorite so far Abby Jimenez book. So I am going to be rating it a 5 out of 5. So then after, I read The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. This is a very good book to read while on vacation or wanting to get into the mood of vacation. It is a summer vacation-y book. It is a fake dating slash marriage of convenience trope. It starts off with Liam and our main character Anna basically get married in order to be able to live in affordable family student housing for their university to finish their degrees. It time jumps to 3 years later where Liam needs Anna to play his fake wife once again,
even though Anna was under the impression that they were divorced.
So then he's able to keep his inheritance. It just follows the story of Liam and Anna that takes over in the span of a week in Thailand for a wedding. This book was the perfect book to get into the mood for summer, and if you're going on like a vacation, it very much feels like a summer tropical vacation kind of story. It is fun and it is such an easy read. The banter is really nice too. The chemistry between the characters are really good. Like I said, it's just a very easy read. My only problem with this one was that the ending really just brought down the rating for me because I felt like the ending was really rushed. I had a problem with the timing of the whole story in general, but the ending was really rushed. I feel like I've mentioned this in my previous video too, but I feel like there's a lot of complexity to what happened in the story, and I don't think that the book was trying to make it super heavy on legalities. I didn't like how it played out, and it felt rushed, and there was a lot of time jumps on the epilogue, and it was just not my favorite. And because of that, I am going to rate it a 3.5 out of 5. It was a really fun story to read. I enjoyed it all the way through up until the end. I was going to give it a 4 out of 5. The next book I read was Beach Read by Emily Henry. So I've been on the hunt for a Emily Henry book that is just going to give me all the feels that I'm going to really enjoy, and just it's going to be one of my favorite Emily Henry books, and I think I finally found it. My thing with Emily Henry is that I usually get bored towards like the middle end of her books, and this one kept me engaged throughout it all. To say that I was actually in a flight on the way back in a very uncomfortable flight in the middle seat where I felt like I couldn't move. I finished it on that flight. Once I started reading this book, I just completely disappeared from that plane and was just in this book. So it really did keep me entertained and I really enjoyed it. So Beach Read is about our main character January, who goes to a beach house in Michigan that her dad left behind for her. She's going through this huge writing slump, is grieving her dad who just passed away, while also finding out that her dad was actually having an affair with another person who also happens to be living in Michigan, because that beach house is where they used to kind of live together. She's kind of just going through it. She finds out that her rival from college, Augustus, is actually her neighbor, and it just kind of follows the story between January and Augustus, and it's a rivals to lovers kind of trope. It is so good. I feel like it's not only following the romance book, but it also follows her having to deal with the grief of knowing that her father did something that kind of soured all her memories that she has of him, and learning how to grieve him but also feel okay with being upset at him. And then you also want to find out why all of this did happen. It's a very engaging story. I feel like the romance, the banter, and everything was really good, but also the side story kept the story engaged as well. And I feel like that's what I really needed from Emily Henry, is that I'm okay when it's just romance books, but for some reason some of her books just didn't capture me the way it captures other people, but this one really did. I really enjoyed this one. I have absolutely no critiques for this one. I also just really like the chemistry between Augustus and January. They are so good for each other. But this was a really good story. Really enjoyed myself. This is going to be a 5 out of 5 for me. The book I read after that is A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the novella after A Court of Wings and Ruin. This story is basically an extended epilogue post-war of how Feyre and the group is doing, basically how they are recovering from all of that. It's also a really good setup for the following book in the series, which is Nesta's story. You kind of see all of that start to develop in this book. It is very much slowed down compared to the rest of the series. So I remember when I first read it the first time, I was not really that into it. In fact, I'm pretty sure I rated it pretty low. But this time around, because I did take a little bit of a longer break between the books, I felt like I was able to appreciate it a lot more, because it really is just them trying to rebuild their life and learn how to live in peace after everything that has happened. I think it was a really good book. Like I said, an extended epilogue. I did mention this already in my previous video. If you do want a little bit more of a rereading recap, you can watch my previous video about it. In conclusion of that recap is that I feel very strongly that ACOTAR should have ended as a trilogy and then been made a spin-off series after, to focus on the other characters. That way all of the accomplishments and the peace that our current main characters in ACOTAR face, they're able to keep that peace and not ruin the characters by continuing the series. I really think it should have just ended there, but I'm not the author. That's not on me. However, this was pretty good. It was really enjoyable. So this time around, I'm going to rate it a 4 out of 5. After that, I read This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. This book was good. Ish. I also mentioned this in my previous video, but basically I've learned that I am not the type of person that likes romance books specifically that take in the span of years, where it happens like every year something happens, or they meet up every summer, or they meet up once a year to do something. I think it's cute and it's nice, but I like to see the relationships develop, and the only time I've seen that happen with books that I like, they have to be very detailed, and there has to be a reason for like these big time jumps other than having like a summer setting. This one does go back between past and present. So the present timeline is our main character Lucy, who drops everything, her whole life, basically puts everything on pause to go back to Prince Edward Island to be with Bridget, who's her best friend, because Bridget has a bit of a kind of like mental breakdown right before her wedding, like a week before her wedding. Lucy goes to this island to be with Bridget and just be there as a supportive friend. The thing is that Lucy has a thing for Bridget's brother Felix, and has been having a thing for him for 5 years, where they kind of develop this friends with benefits situation, and they keep it a secret from Bridget because one of Bridget's rules was don't fall in love with my brother. It's just this whole story between Lucy and Felix, and you're trying to figure out what happened the previous year to understand why there's tension going on in the present timeline, and it just jumps back and forth between previous years to the present year. And then at the same time, you kind of want to figure out why Bridget is having a breakdown and possibly feels like the wedding might not happen. It does have the summer vibes. It made me want oysters, so I had oysters. So it really does feel like it has a lot of summer vibes. However, I just was not fully into it. It was just, I think, the time jumps. I like to see, like I said, relationships develop, and I feel like when there's time jumps, you kind of don't really get to form that attachment that well, because then you don't see like the realization happen naturally, because it's just more like you get to see only snippets of that part. I don't know, again, it's just a preference. I'm not a huge fan of that kind of style of writing, or romance books specifically. Again, I'm talking about romance. Yeah, I mean, it was good summer book. Is it my favorite? Not really. I feel like I read a lot better books this month. I think it has all the vibes. I think it was nice, but I am going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. So I'm going to review Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I finished this book in 2 days. I am so mad that I had in my TBR for so long, and I just read it. Like, it was really good and I just read it. I'm kind of glad that I just read it, because that means I only have to wait a week for the second book to come out. But also, I can't believe I did not pick this up sooner. So Powerless by Lauren Roberts is a young adult romance fantasy book, romantasy. This story is about our main character Peyton, who lives in a kingdom where humans are either of two kinds. They're ordinaries, people who have absolutely nothing in particular to them, they're just regular humans. And then there are the elites, those people who develop some abilities after going through a disease and surviving that disease. And so in this kingdom that Peyton lives, being an ordinary is basically a sentence to death. The king decreed 30 years ago that the ordinaries were carrying a disease that would eliminate the elite race. They allowed them to flee, and those who did not flee would get executed. So our main character Peyton here, she's an ordinary who's hiding in plain sight. Her father trained her on how to trick everyone to thinking that she has a psychic ability, and after her father passed away, she has been living in the slums for 5 years. She ends up accidentally saving the prince and getting herself recognized by her people. Peyton's people end up nominating her to represent them in the trials that are coming up that are meant to honor what they call Purge Day, which is when they killed all the ordinaries. And then she's taken to the castle to prepare for the trials, and it just follows the story of Peyton getting ready for these trials, trying to survive being an ordinary who has absolutely no abilities, while at the same time trying to resist the connection she has with the prince that she saved. The pining and the angst, the slow burn, the enemies to lover, everything is done so well in this book. It is just so nostalgic to the days when I used to read this kind of stories back in high school. It's just so pure and innocent. There's like absolutely no spice in it, and there's just so much tension and chemistry between the two. The banter is just immaculate. Like, the vibes are vibing. It is just great. It is very heavy on the romance side, as you can tell from my description, but I don't mind. I knew I was getting into that when I was reading the story. And then the fantasy side, the plot to all of that, very much reminds me of the Hunger Games, which I'm okay with because I haven't read those kind of books in a really long time. So the trials do remind me a little bit of the Hunger Games. Overall, I think this book was really, really good. I feel like this book was very much a prequel to the whole story. I feel like it gave a lot of background and history to set up what's going to happen in the following book. So even though this is the first book to the series, it very much felt like a prequel. Like I said, it is an enemies to lovers, and I feel like this book cemented the enemies to lovers. Normally when you get that, you don't really see the history behind it, and here you see why they are enemies in the next few books. I don't know how long they'll be enemies for, but I really enjoyed the series. Like, it is everything I expected it to be, and it was very enjoyable. So for that, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. 5. It was going to be a 5, but there were some times where our main character Peyton did some like questionable things, and I'm just kind of like, girl. But then again, I'm just like, okay, that's a lot. There's a lot of room for character development. Other than that, 4.5 out of 5. After Powerless, I could not get enough of that world. I read Powerful, which is the novella after Powerless. This novella is all about Peyton's best friend Adina. If you read Powerless, you know what you're getting into when reading Powerful. And I think that's the hardest part about reading this novella, because you know how Powerless ends, you're just anticipating the ending in this book. Lauren Roberts is cruel for doing this to us. I really enjoyed the second, devoured it in like 2 hours, 3 hours. This is a grumpy sunshine kind of story, and it is just full on romance. And I feel like it gives you a little bit of history of one of the characters, Mikado, which I have a feeling will probably show up in the next books. So we understand a little bit of his background in this book. I did not expect to like it as much as I did. I really enjoyed it. I cannot wait to see how all of this ties in with the next book. I'm going to rate this a 5 out of 5. For July TBR, like I said, I am still going to have my monthly book date with myself. I'm still going to make a whole vlog about that and just make it more of a bookish vlog instead, and I will bring you all along to whatever bookstore it is that I go. I might just go to Barnes & Noble's, but I did want to visit another bookstore once the books that I want have been released. In the meantime, I will show you all what I am planning to read now. So we'll start off with The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I have already read this book actually, but after reading Powerless, I really wanted to read another young adult fantasy, and I know that I really enjoyed this book and I wanted to know what happens next. So I'm going to reread The Cruel Prince so then I can just continue the series. Another book I'll be reading for July is A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. So this is currently the 4th book, and this story is all about Nesta. This is a reread. However, I vaguely remember what happens in this book. It is so big. Like, oh my god, this is so big. I never realized how many pages I read when I read them the first time around, because I read them on my Kindle. So having the actual physical book, I'm just like,
I actually read all of this.
And then another book that I'll be reading this month is King of Wrath by Anna Huang. This is from the Kings of Sin series. This is another reread. Oh my god, I just realized this whole month is basically rereads. I don't really remember what this book is about at all though, and I did stop this series because I felt like it was a copy and paste from the Twisted series. So since it's been a while since I read the Twisted series, I feel like I could give it a chance and it might feel a little bit different now that I have taken some time from it. And then the last book that I have at home that I will be reading is Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. This was a birthday gift and I am very excited to read this. So yeah, it turns out that this is actually the 3rd book of the Happily Ever After playlist series. So once again, I'm reading these books out of order, which kind of sucks because I had the first book in my hand and I'm just like, nah, I want to read this one because this one's more up my alley. I will be reading the series out of order once again. In total right now, I have these 4 books. Like I said, currently I'm waiting to get Reckless by Lauren Roberts. That's also going to be part of my July TBR. Then I'm waiting for the book club I'm in to choose our book. So then I can get that book. So that would be another book. Maybe I'll be reading like 8 books. I think that's it for this vlog. Like I said, this feels very weird. It's very different from my usual reading wrap-ups. But I promise you'll get a bookish vlog instead. A whole bookish vlog. Thank y'all so much for watching. Have a beautiful day and I will see y'all next time. Bye!